Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses with Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. Only a minor crisis this morning as I suddenly discovered that the script I'd carefully written for this morning's show over the last few days had somehow managed to eliminate itself from the memory of my computer. So I've had to sort of kind of lash it together a little bit at the last minute. Morning to Cheryl and Tony, who've both looked in. So what do we have in the show? Well, I've got the same content. It just might not quite be as smooth as it normally should be. The DVLA are under fire for a Swansea COVID outbreak. A French filtering experiment has led to more accidents. Kawasaki's timeless KLR 650 has re-emerged in the US. And a warning not to get caught by unexpected charges when ordering from Europe. I'll explain how they work. And I'll also give you an example of how a bargain battery actually isn't. And just to finish off, I'll also define the difference between filtering and lane splitting, as that's something that tends to confuse people. So grab yourself your brew, settle yourself down, and you're joining me, Kevin Williams, for the next 20 to 30 minutes with Elevenses. Right, okay, now first story in the news is that there has been a serious COVID-19 outbreak at the DVLA's Swansea headquarters, and on Wednesday it was confirmed that in fact a DVLA worker there had died. There have been around I think they said a dozen cases of the virus at the DVLA offices between the initial lockdown in March and September, but since then there's been a massive 535 cases within the offices of the DVLA, and there are reports that staff have been scared to go into work. The high number of cases at this government agency has been discussed by MPs and the Prime Minister, and the union leader is calling for a full investigation after it emerged that Chief Executive Julie Leonard had only actually been to the offices 6 or 7 times herself since September. She was speaking to the Transport Select Committee on Wednesday, and she said that all staff who could work from home, around 2,000 of them, were in fact doing so. The DVLA has said that its focus throughout the pandemic has been on staff safety, and that the organisation continues to work closely with Public Health Wales and to follow the Welsh Government's guidance to ensure the site is COVID secure. However, reports from the site suggest that over 2,000 workers are still going in every day. And on site, workers have complained of hot desking happening, which is clearly not part of the COVID recommendations. Inadequate cleaning overnight, shortages of hand gel and wipes during the day, too many people in the building unnecessarily, and I've even heard word that there has been some pressure exerted on people who don't want to go into work to actually attend. The PCS Union Secretary Mark Savotka has said that the union is deeply concerned and saddened following the news of a staff member dying at the DVLA. And he says there must be a full investigation into the circumstances. There's no doubt, he says, that insisting that over 2,000 DVLA staff going to work every day is a recipe for further COVID cases, and that increases the possibility of further deaths. Well, they certainly need to get this huge outbreak sorted out, that's for sure. I know Grant Shapps has been asked some fairly pointed questions. He's obviously the Transport Secretary, so ultimately that's where the buck will stop. All right, okay, don't forget, if you have any comments, if you have any questions, anything you want to ask generally, anything you'd like me to cover in a future show, or feedback generally on the show, I am very happy to hear it. You can add via the comment stream at the bottom of the Facebook page, and I will deal with it either online or when I get to the end of the show. Right, okay. Second item on the news then. FeMA, that's the Federation of European Motorcyclists Associations. So that's the umbrella group effectively that looks after riders' rights right across Europe, has a story on their site that suggests that the recent experiment into lane splitting that's been going on in France has showed disappointing results. The indication is that there have been more accidents, but the people involved, the French authorities, have actually said that there is a need for a second, more in-depth experiment to try to get an explanation of exactly what's happened. Now, the page on the FeMA site isn't the clearest written one I've ever read. So it's a little difficult to follow from that exactly what has been going on. And the original 80-page report is actually in French, and it's in fairly technical French too. So as I understand it, though, the results refer to a 5-year experiment which was carried out over 11 French départements. The trial officially allowed motorcyclists to filter between the lanes of either slow-moving or stationary traffic, and the trial was due to come to an end today, 31st of January. If you've ridden in France, particularly any of the big cities, you'll know that filtering has always gone on. It's been tolerated, generally speaking, by the French authorities, but it's never actually been regulated in French law. So as best I understand it from the article, the issue is that where the experiment took place, accidents involving powered two-wheelers actually increased by 12%. At the same time, on other roads in departments, it actually went down by 10%. Now, why that is far from clear. As I say, I haven't read the full document. I will do my best to at least get through the conclusions on that, but it is in fairly technical French, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to decipher. But Marie Gauthier-Melleret, who's the interministerial delegate for road safety, said the result is not up to our expectations, since the ratio of accidents on the experiment's networks compared to other networks has increased significantly in one zone and increased it slightly elsewhere. There is one bit of good news on this study, though, that the article concluded that the filtering by motorized two-wheelers was well accepted by other road users. So I'll have a look at this, try and figure out what exactly we're talking about, and I will get back to you on that one. Right, okay, so what else to talk about? Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. What people choose to ride is always interesting. Now, I happen to like single-cylinder inline motorcycles. I know all the arguments for V-twins and triples and inline fours and so on, but my first motorcycle was a 125 single. I put hundreds of thousands of miles on a whole bunch of CB250 RSAs, which were also, you probably recall, little single-cylinder bikes. I've still got one, actually. I know I also owned Honda's XBR 500. I put something on the order of 80 or 90,000 miles on that. And I put a significant number of miles on an NX 650 Dominator. Now, the Dominator was a long runner. First model appeared in 88 and it ran till 2003. And the bike itself was almost a prototype for adventure bike styling. And frankly, for ordinary riding, I'd be quite happy to have a Dommy. You know, people say, oh, it hasn't got any power. 44 horsepower, in fact, the 650 Dominator pumped out. But the real figure that you need to look at was 53 foot-pounds of torque. Basically, it's the torque that gives the bike the shove that you feel when you're opening the throttle. Now, compare that with my XJ6, which I ride at the moment. It's a typical sort of inline four, been basically detuned or retuned, I should say, for mid-range. So it's a fairly modest 80-odd horsepower, 78. I've got a figure here. And the torque figure is 44 foot-pounds. and quite a lot more up the rev limit as well, 8,500. So the Dominator, 44 horsepower and 53 foot-pounds, and the XJ6, 78 horsepower and 44 foot-pounds. So you see the difference between single and a smooth inline four. Basically, the Dommy gives you a bigger shove up the backside when you twist the throttle. And that's even though the diversion is actually retuned with a very flat and torque curve, which makes it actually really easy to ride. So I was quite interested to see that Kawasaki have revived the KLR 650. So that's another big single here, which has always had a bit of an adventure twist. And the original KLR ran from 1987, and it replaced the KLR 600, the previous air-cooled model. That first generation 650 actually went along till 2008. So that's 20 years almost without any changes. And then the second generation came in that year and it produced some major updates. That second generation lasted 10 years, and then Kawasaki pulled the plug completely on the model in 2018. But now, on screen, what you see is the third generation 2022 KLR 650 Dual Sport, which is due to be sold at least in the US and Canada. Now, right now, the availability of this particular machine in other markets hasn't been announced, but essentially the bike has had a pretty full-on workover. The motor is still the liquid-cooled 652 single-cylinder double overhead cam, but it gets revised cam profiles, a new catalyzer, and most importantly, it features fuel injection for the first time. That's how it can meet US regulations, and it gives me at least a hope it will meet the current EU regulations. Other modifications, the clutch has been improved. There's although there's still chain drive, obviously, and a 5-speed gearbox as before. The new performance figures haven't been released, but I would imagine it will be something in the low 40s, and probably not dissimilar to the my old NX 650 figures that I gave you a moment ago. The chassis itself has got a new rear frame. Swing arm and swing arm pivot is all different. That's also to enhance handling. 41mm fork with fairly long travel up front, adjustable unitrack shock at the back. And what Kawasaki say about those is that they are sort of sprung to provide both sharp on-road handling, but also to provide off-road capability, which basically means that you should get a bike capable of dealing with the sort of potholes and bumps and speed humps that we currently find littering our roads in the UK. The 21-inch and 17-inch wheel combination are tube type, which will be a good thing for people who ride a lot off-road. But for a road rider like myself, I'm slightly less happy with that. I do like my tubeless tyres. Interestingly, you'll notice that the discs on the machine are actually round. The pedal discs that were fitted to the previous model have been ditched for conventional round discs, and Kawasaki say basically they work better, which is interesting, isn't it? What else do you get? You get the option of ABS in the USA, so you can still buy it without. Styling wise, I think the results are pretty sharp looking. All new bodywork, LED headlight up front as you'd expect, newly designed tail light, revised turn signals all round. You get your usual multifunction LCD digital display now with the obligatory clock and fuel gauge. Kawasaki also say they've done significant work to reduce vibration. Something that I seem to remember the old one was always a bit of a sort of a buzzer. So you've got rubber mounted bars, pegs and seat. And Kawasaki also say that the riding position has been tweaked. The bars and foot pegs have been moved outwards slightly to make for a more relaxed position, and the fuel tank has also been reshaped. Meanwhile, the screen up front is actually a proper screen now. It's 50mm tall. That's quite a significant difference, actually. Passengers not being forgotten either. You get an enhanced seat shape and grab rails, and also the seat cover has been changed to try to prevent rider and passengers sliding together under braking. For sort of a lot of riders, a fairly significant upgrade will be the electrical system, which is 80 watts extra output, which you will need power, of course, extra lights, but not quite as much as you would have done given the LEDs. If there's a downside to the bike, it is a bit weighty. 220 for the kilograms there for the fully equipped model that you see in front of you. By comparison, my old NX was fairly feather-light, 170 kilograms fully fueled. There will be several variants. The most expensive is the KLR 650 Adventure, and that comes equipped with side cases, the LED auxiliary light set, engine guards, tank pad, and DC and USB power outputs. I think that's the one that you see in front of you with the an optional top case also installed. Slightly cheaper than the Adventure. The Adventure, I think, did I say it was $7,999? The $7,399 comes with a top case only, but you get your power outputs. The base model is a fairly bargain, it's $6,699, and ABS is a $300 option on that. So I'll be interested to see if this actually turns up over here. I personally think there's a market for a bike like this, something which undercuts the big adventure bikes, which are actually pretty damn pricey, and which is actually usable for ordinary riders. I was a bit surprised when I popped this up on my regular forum that it was a distinct lack of love was shown for the KLR, despite the fact that for years it's been a bit of a cult bike. And I think, generally speaking, that we got seduced by sort of BMW 1250 GSs and sort of hugely weighty machines like that. Lots and lots of power, very capable indeed, but I think we've forgotten the fun that can be had on a punchy single. Right, okay, so what else have we got? Oh yes, I did have another photograph of that and I forgot to show it to you. So yeah, that's basically the engine arrangement on the bike. I think it looks pretty neat. Right, okay, so on to the next story. Over the last few years, we've all got used to the freedom that comes with ordering things on the internet. And of course, many of our parts and many of our purchases, clothing, have come from European suppliers. I bought, from the internet, and things have been delivered from Europe myself. But unfortunately, what's happened over the last month, of course, is that buyers have been hit with some very unexpected costs on EU orders. Why? Simple enough, it's Brexit. One of the consequences of Brexit is that we no longer have linked economies, and that means that customs duty and import VAT are levied on all goods over £135 value, and on items like alcohol, tobacco, and perfume, by the way, which are worth considerably less than that. So import VAT is charged at the same rate, which is mostly 20% in Europe. So that isn't so much the issue. But what's catching people out is the customs duty. Now, this arises because even if an item is supplied from the EU and may even appear to be made in the EU, if there's a component of that product imported from outside the EU, you may find that you're going to pay duty on the value of the whole item. And the example was given in the Guardian article a few days ago about somebody who bought some framed photos, and the cost online, including VAT, was £71.74 with free delivery. But when the item turned up, there was a charge for import duty of £25.34, which was more than a third up on the original price. And the explanation that the Guardian gave was that the frames themselves may have been constructed from wood sourced from China. In that case, the customs duty applies on top of the VAT. So although around 40% of products don't incur any extra customs duty, you do have to know which will and which won't. Shoes, for example, are a product which incur a duty rate of 16%. I haven't investigated whether that applies to motorcycle boots. My guess is it probably will, as they are not deemed to be safety equipment. So unfortunately, apart from applying a bit of common sense, there's no way to tell easily without spending hours consulting the government's information pages what will and what won't have a customs tariff attached to it. And there's more bad news, because if the customs duty is payable on an item that you've just ordered, you will have to pay a handling charge imposed by the delivery firm, because basically they are having to do all the paperwork for you. They have to collect the cash and then submit the cash for your purchase. Royal Mail apparently charges at the moment £8 up front for that, and they won't deliver until you pay up. So basically the item will be returned or retained in a sorting office, and you have to go and sort it out down there. DHL will pay the customs duty and the import VAT on your behalf, but they then charge a minimum of £11 and a flat fee of 2.5% of the duty tax. So it could be a significant amount of money. And there's one other issue that a lot of people are also starting to become aware of with EU orders. What if the item of clothing or the spare part or whatever it is you've just bought turns out to be the wrong size or to be faulty? We've got very used to being able to return things for refunds or replacement very easily, but here is some more bad news. EU sellers may not have to apply distance selling regulations, which allow customers to cancel within 14 days. James Kane of the Institute of Government explains EU sellers might refuse to accept returns from the UK because they would then have the hassle of clearing the goods back through customs and having to claim exemptions from EU import duty. You, as the exporter of the goods that you're returning, would have to fill out a customs declaration form that you can obtain from a post office. If you want to find out a bit more about this from a motorcycle specific supplier, have a look at this page here from Moto Legends. It's a bit self-promotional, but it does explain the issues in a fairly clear fashion. So who else has said this morning? Clive has said some technical issues but can't comment, so on the phone. Nigel says good morning. He says he had a few problems connecting. Right, so okay, yeah, Clive says back to buying from local motorcycle shops. It can't say he's upset about that, but may restrict a choice. Yes, that's the problem, and we may end up, of course, spending rather more money doing it. And that leads me rather neatly into my next item. Many of us will have had bikes parked up for a while, probably 3 months since we last rode. In many areas back in November, we got locked down, you may recall. We didn't have much of a summer. We had months of lockdown before that, and if we didn't ride during the winter, the chances are the bike has been parked up this year for far more months than it's been ridden. And so it's quite likely that a few bikes out there are suffering dead or at least dying batteries. And it's likely too that as the technology becomes more accepted, more and more riders are thinking about these kind of lithium iron phosphate batteries, like the one you see on screen, because of their ability to hold a charge when they're not in use. And so perhaps it's not surprising that a latest offer email slipped into my inbox during the week, and it contained an offer on this bargain priced, guaranteed to fit your XJ6 Shido battery. One thing immediately caught my eye, and it should catch yours. Look at the price at the bottom there, £128.95, that are allegedly reduced from £164.99. How much was my immediate thought? Now, I bought one of these batteries, not this particular size, but bought one of these batteries for my Hornet back in the spring of 2018. The lead acid battery had died over the winter and was finished off by the sort of 2 months or so that I was away in New Zealand for the Shiny Side Up tour. So I bought one of these Shido batteries, popped it in Hornet, and it's still going fine, by the way, 3 years later. but even though they were pretty much the latest thing at the time, it didn't cost anything like this price. And last year, I actually got hold of one for the XJ6. So it's basically the battery that you see on screen. I've not actually fitted it yet because the 12-year-old original lead acid battery is still going fine. It's a Yuasa, and they do tend to last well when they're original. But the replacement I have bought, which is sitting in a cupboard at the moment and holding its charge nicely, cost nothing like £129. So I did a quick check online for the XJ's fitment, and I came up with a string of places selling the battery for considerably less than half that offer price, including Halfords, who never knowingly sell you a bargain if they can possibly avoid it. So the moral is that shop around, don't rely on email bargains for your purchases. Right, okay, so what else have I got to say? I mentioned filtering in the French study just a moment ago, and the fact that the numbers had gone up. So the study wasn't giving them the results that they were hoping for, that filtering would be safer. Now, you possibly notice that the terms filtering and lane splitting are both bandied about. And what I would say here is it's useful to actually distinguish between the two different terms, because they actually do mean somewhat different things. It's worth noting that the DVSA also put out in a consultation whether or not filtering should be added to the CBT syllabus a few years ago. I don't know the results of that, actually. I should dig that out and try and find it. So what's the difference between filtering and lane splitting? Well, when I was a courier many years ago now, we just called everything filtering. Anytime that we were passing slower moving traffic or stopped traffic, it didn't matter where we were doing it, it was filtering as far as we were concerned. The term lane splitting only really appeared in the mid-90s, when really, I suppose, it came across with the internet, because suddenly we were talking to American riders on the internet and they were talking about lane splitting, we were talking about filtering. And as people have said in the past about English and American English, we have a common language, which leads to quite a lot of confusion at times. You can find handy definitions of both on the internet. For example, Wikipedia says that lane splitting involves riding between lanes or rows of slow-moving traffic or stopped traffic moving in the same direction, whilst filtering describes moving through traffic that is stopped. So in effect, lane splitting is a subset of filtering, where we're moving between traffic all going in the same direction. So imagine that you are on a dual carriageway or a motorway and traffic has all come to a halt. If you are moving through those queues, then you are lane splitting. Filtering is that broader umbrella term, and sort of brings to mind what I used to do when I was a courier, sort of going up a two-lane street, going down the middle of the two-lane street. So I'd be moving up the offside of the slow or stationary traffic, and there would be oncoming vehicles sort of coming towards me in the other lane. So the definition always becomes a bit blurred when you get onto a single carriageway road which has multiple lanes. What do you do then? So I think the answer really is that you don't get too hung up on terminology. People try to make it sound as if there are different skills involved between filtering and lane splitting, but essentially you just have to ask yourself, are you doing something sensible? They're both a form of overtaking. With lane splitting, when you're going through the queues of traffic all moving in the same direction, the big danger really is that vehicles will change lane from one to the other in front of you. With filtering, the problem is likely to be vehicles turning right as you're going up the outside of them. finding people crossing the road in front of you through gaps, even cyclists coming through sort of narrow gaps that you're not expecting. Pinch points like traffic islands, which remember you shouldn't go the wrong side of because that is a 3-point offence. And of course the proximity to traffic coming the other way as well. You can very quickly lose that gap down the middle. So there is a lot, filtering gets us from A to B. We do make progress. It is very useful. But basically don't worry too much about the terminology. I can honestly say that virtually all the filtering accidents that I saw when I was a courier, and I did see quite a few, all happened because the filtering rider didn't expect a driver to do something. The classic one that I still remember even to this day is the Shaftesbury Avenue, trundling down there at about 5 o'clock on a midsummer evening, so rush hour time. And so basically the road fairly clogged with slow moving traffic. I'm filtering, another courier behind me, desperate to get past me because he wants to go faster. I spotted the van starting to edge out to the right, dropped into the gap behind it, and he saw that as an opportunity to accelerate. And of course, he accelerated straight into the side of the van, which was actually turning right. So the thing is, with either filtering or lane splitting, it doesn't really matter what we call it. We just have to expect things to happen in front of us and be ready to deal with it. All right, okay, so it's already 11:30, so that brings me to pretty much the end of today's show. Just a couple of things I want to quickly finish off on. As I've explained before, I am still open. I'm locked down but not shut down. I will be giving a couple of online talks in the next couple of days, which is good news, to a couple of groups. So don't forget, if you have any connection with a motorcycle group or a club, do feel free to drop me a line and I'll organise something for you. One bit of good news, I did mean to announce this at the beginning of the show, but I completely forgot because, as I said, my script got a bit screwed up. Shiny Side Up in New Zealand. You may recall that in 2018 and 2019, I went over there and I was able to talk on biking issues to the New Zealand riders over there for nearly 5 weeks on a sort of tour right around the two islands, which was fantastic. The good news is I'm making a return visit this year. So in 2 weeks' time, I will be in New Zealand. The bad news is I'll be over there virtually. I will be doing it via Zoom for obvious reasons. So a bit of a disappointment I can't make it over there for real. But I'm really looking forward to actually interacting again with all the other presenters. We'll doubtless get together and have a sort of a drink on Zoom or something after the event. So I'm not sure whether you'll be able to watch those presentations yourself at the moment. I might investigate whether or not I can record my input myself and use it here. I don't know about that. I'll find out what the rights issues are. But yeah, if you're in New Zealand and you are watching, yeah, I hope to see you in just a couple of weeks' time. Anything else to say? One final announcement. As you know, my Facebook posts go out free of charge. My skills on Saturdays and tips on Tuesday are up on the relevant days, week in, week out. They've been going since 2014, and you'll know that I've been putting the archive items up on my coffee page. But I have decided, because there seems to be a significant leakage of people from Facebook, my viewing figures have actually gone down quite significantly. I'm actually going to dual post them. I'm going to post them actually up on my coffee page. So they'll be over there for 60 days free. Actually give you plenty of time to read them before they become subscriber content. And as I've said before, just £3 gets you access to the whole archive, which at the moment stands at over 300 better biking articles from 2014 to 2016. I'm putting 2017 up right now, and I'll get on to the others in due course. So, okay, that's it for today. Don't forget, if you've missed the start of the show, you can catch up with it here on Facebook, or you can head over to YouTube my Survival Skills UK channel. Don't forget that all important UK on the end. That's about it, really. So yes, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there, and hopefully I will see you on Wednesday on my next show. Thanks for looking in.